Howdy, howdy, fellow football fans, and welcome back to another edition of the ONETA Football Show, brought to you by PTE Creative. As always, I'm your host, Evan Davies, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this episode as you are getting part two of our NFL expansion series. So we are asking the question, what if? What if NFL expanded to 40 teams? That could be both international or domestic teams. You already got part one where we saw 29 cities as part of the selection process for these new 8 teams. Now you're finally get to see what those 8 teams are going to be, the cities that are going to be taking it, their logo, their color scheme. It's going to be really fun. Plus, in this episode, we're also going to be going over the players that are going to be available in next week's episode, as we have an entire NFL expansion draft for you, where all 8 teams will be drafting players, and I'm joined by 3 lovely co-hosts for that episode, and it is certainly a whole heck of a lot of fun to do, and I can't wait for you guys to see that episode either. But you want to see these teams, you want to see where we're going. Now, I do want to throw one caveat in here. I do art on this channel that is very lovingly made by myself that means the world to me. I'm generally not a fan of using AI for art. However, due to the process that I am having here, I broke my own rules and I used AI to have these logos created by Adobe AI. So, before anyone goes off, if you really like these logos, oh my god, this is not art I did myself. I just simply typed in the sentences. But I always want to be fair and honest in what I'm doing with you guys because you guys mean a lot to me. So, let's see what these logos are because I want to say they're pretty good. But we've had 29 teams as options. We're down to 8. The teams that are joining the NFL now. Let's meet team number 1. Team number 1 coming to you from Barcelona, Spain. It is the Barcelona Realeza, or Realeza Barcelona, as it would be known in Espanol, in Spanish. Barcelona was a really, really fun choice with the crown logo and the red and yellow color scheme. You could say it's very Chiefs-esque, but I intentionally tried to get a little bit further away from that with some of the color scheming. There are slightly different reds there. The gold that comes out in this yellow is not inherently the yellow I was inherently looking for, but that's A-okay. Barcelona receives a team partially due to history, honestly, with NFL Europe, which is certainly something fun and interesting to look into. As Barcelona did host an NFL Europe team, you want to get into the Spanish market. It is internationally an important market to try to break into, and I'm sure the NFL is going to be getting there soon, within the next couple of years, especially as they're going further into Germany. They're trying to go to Brazil this year, and obviously the UK is locked up, which, trust me, I got something for you, my friends in the UK. But Barcelona, we wanted to invoke the idea of royalty, tie back to the teams that are very popular in other sports. Barcelona was incredibly interesting team pick for us here in making this because of the options to be either in Camp Nou or the other stadiums there. It gave a built-in fan base that we already have some history with, so that is why Barcelona was chosen to represent Spain and create a new market as part of our European division of football that we have here. So that is why Barcelona was selected as part of the Barcelona Realeza, which is incredibly fun, exciting to get to that. But you want to see team number 2, and I want to give it to you. Rounding out team number 2 is the Birmingham Dragons, and I'm not talking about Birmingham, Alabama. I'm talking about Birmingham, England. Birmingham, England. The Dragons was a really fun and interesting choice as well. It's very fun talking to my future co-hosts when we're doing notes and of the like, where they didn't quite understand why I picked what I did. They liked it, but they weren't fully understanding as to why Dragons was chosen. They just thought it was cool. For me, one of the things that was really interesting in this process, and something why I do these big projects that maybe many people would say are too detail oriented or too big and ridiculous and not just quick. I'm really into long form content. Um, it's something that I think people want. I'm someone personally who I hate when I see a podcast that I like go under 45 minutes. I always want something an hour plus in my content, which is why I do a lot of long form stuff for you. I'm one man, so I'm not perfect in that, but I'm always trying. Part of the detailing in this was not just incorporating ideas of what's the population there? Do they have a sports history? Is there a place we could play? It was also getting to know the city. I learned a lot in this process about some of these cities that were bidding options. We have two city options that could go over to 50,000 with Molineux Stadium or Via Park or Villa Park in Birmingham to play. That was fun. What was really, really interesting is Birmingham is actually one of the world's jewelry centers, in that at one point, I believe 25% of all jewelry in the world was made in Birmingham, which is an insane statistic, but it still has a huge, huge influence on um, jewelry being made around the world. And that's something you wouldn't know unless you're doing the research into the history of the city and what they do. So that was the inspiration behind the dragons. So I love fantasy. That's something that you can easily see on the rest of the channel. Why not use something very cool such as the dragons, which happened to be in Barcelona back in the day in NFL Europe? I wanted to switch that around so we don't immediately evoke NFL Europe. We use that advantage. Birmingham with the dragons was a really cool option because you get to bring up that idea of the dragon's horde. We bring that up, we can see kind of a dragon overseeing a crest as if it is hoarding its jewels to really pay homage to the history of Birmingham, England with that jewelry exchange, and something that was really, really fun to evoke, which is why Birmingham was a representative in the UK specifically. We want to be in the UK. We're playing tons of games in London nowadays for the modern NFL, so it's only going to get bigger and brighter over in the UK. So why not go to Birmingham and make a really fun go of it? Now you got to go team number 3. I give to you the Dusseldorf Bergs. And maybe you might be asking, what in the hell is a Berg and why is this? This is quite the extensive logo for an NFL team, and I would agree with you. It is. But it was a very fun process to be a part of making that with AI, because even AI is not as easy as you believe it is. The first time I put in a prompt, it was just a big swirly stick of color. It wasn't anything remotely looking like a logo, so it was very fun. But the Dusseldorf Bergs is something that's a logo that came out just absolute dynamite. The idea behind the Dusseldorf Bergs, the reason Dusseldorf was picked as a German representative, we have NFL Europe history there, but also on top of that, NFL offices in Europe only have one, and it's in Dusseldorf, Germany. So you already have a built-in league presence in Dusseldorf. So you already have the international presence there of the NFL, which is incredibly smart to get there. So use that to your advantage. The Bergs and the color scheming was this. Dusseldorf was selected because it's part of a triangle of cities with Dusseldorf, Cologne, and Dortmund. So the overall giant population that you're pulling from is 10.93 million people. So that is a hell of a market to get into. And Dusseldorf is ideally located to hit those three markets together. And it's something that you could bounce around from different stadiums, as all three of those cities have NFL caliber stadiums in some way, shape, or form that you could utilize to your advantage to really build a grassroots campaign where you can get all three cities involved. But the color scheming and the inspiration behind Dusseldorf was something, again, doing history and research into the city. Dusseldorf is right on the Rhine River, such an important feature in Germany in terms of history, trade, you name it. The Rhine is wildly important in Germany to its economy and to its people. And something very fascinating and interesting is Berg is another word for a fort or a castle. There are over 140 castles in the Dusseldorf area on the Rhine River, or in that area. So why not use that to your advantage? So that is why Dusseldorf is the Burgs, as it is a fortress or a castle to hold and defend, just like you have to hold and defend the honor of your NFL. So that is why Dusseldorf is the Burgs, and a team that I'm just so happy to have in this expansion league of ours. So Dusseldorf Burgs is the third team to enter our new expansion series. But we're going to go repeat something. We've gone to 3 new countries, but let's go back a little bit. Our fourth team, the London Knights. The Knights are certainly a team to get interested in, especially with this charcoal gray black color scheme. This is a straight up, very easy, straightforward answer for you. This is incredibly obvious. The Knights, London, you get all the classic UK theming, but I also thought it was a built-in rivalry with the Dragons, Knights versus Dragons. It's a very classic medieval fantasy rivalry to have there. London is obviously the hub of international football for the NFL. Uh, there was no way, and I repeat, no way in hell I was going to do this series and not pick a London team. I tried not to just go with the most obvious, which you will see as we move forward. Barcelona is not inherently the biggest market in Spain. Birmingham is not the biggest market, but we get London, so we kind of get that. Dusseldorf is not the biggest market, but it's part of the biggest market, or one of the biggest markets in Germany, so it was logical. With London, that is the market in the UK. You need to focus on that, and it's clearly already a focus, so it would be incredibly foolish not to continue the work that the NFL has already done to get there. And we've already seen teams kind of be embraced there. Jacksonville's clearly embraced there. Other teams are starting to be embraced there as they make more visits. So London is such a logical option that you had to have one, and to make it the Knights with a cool color scheme, a cool new logo, and something fans there could be really excited and proud for and think is really cool, could really boost the energy of the NFL there. So, no brainer, London had to have a team, and it is the fourth team to be entered as part of our expansion series, which is the London Knights. Well, now we're going to get to our second half of teams. But before we do that, I got to ask you something, guys. This has been an entire amount of work that has been a labor of love for over a year. But it takes a lot of work, and it's fun to be rewarded for your work. So if you could help a brother out, head on over to ptecreative.etsy.com. You can get art for yourself, and all that art is made by me. No AI is involved whatsoever in that artwork. That's why I always make the big distinctions, because I never want someone to feel as though I'm trying to rip them off by just typing in a few sentences or something of the like, even though we're getting the world around here. But go to ptecreative.etsy.com. Get yourself some cool merchandise at all themes around stuff that we do on the channel, and can really give you something fun and bring a smile to your face. And to bring a smile to my face for you guys even to look at the shop, let alone buy something. So head on over to ptecreative.etsy.com and reward yourself just like I'm trying to reward myself for this big load of work that I've been doing on this expansion series. But we move to our second half of teams here. We've got 2 representatives of the UK, 1 Spanish representative in Spain, and 1 in Germany. Let's see where we go next. Team number 5 is part of our 8 new teams. We're going to Mexico, baby, and we're going to Monterrey, Mexico, as part of the Monterrey Cerveceros, which is Los Cerveceros de Monterrey in Spanish, to the best of my translation abilities. Now, what's really interesting here with Monterrey and why they are called the Cerveceros. In doing this research, it was really, really fun to find out Monterrey, actually, one of their biggest facets of their economy is brewing. They're huge, huge suppliers of beer throughout the world, especially Hispanic beer going close by. It's almost all through Monterrey for the most part, which is really fun and interesting to see that level. Monterrey is actually the only Mexican representative in this new setup. The logical question could be, why not go to Mexico City? So, beyond the cool history of getting Brewers involved and naming the team after the Brewers, which, yes, I'm a Scotty, now back in my home state. Love the state of Wisconsin. It is fun to get a Brewers type team into the league, even though I'm not that big of a baseball fan. I still think the Brewers is a unique name. And Los Cerveceros de Monterrey is really cool. But the idea behind Monterrey over Mexico City is this: Mexico City, by far, is a larger market. And it's logical. You've had games there in the past. Um, it's an important city as part of your expansion, as you have a 21.8 million person strong metropolis that is going up. Your issue with Mexico City is somewhat proximity and competition, whereas Monterrey makes a very interesting and unique um, boon for the NFL. Monterey is incredibly friendly to American business and American culture due to its proximity here. And you get the rub from the Houston Texans and more specifically the Dallas Cowboys of popularity coming from America going down to Monterey, being almost the first initial big gateway of American culture terrestrially to Mexico. So Monterey has a thriving metropolis. It has over 1 million people in the city itself. The metropolis is 5.3 million people deep. It's growing exponentially at 26.39%. So it's growing at a huge rate. So you're going to get more and more fans, and it's friendly with close proximity to the states, which is really logical. Plus, it gives you the ability to go play a game or two in Mexico City every year and continue to grow the Mexican fan base. If you're ever to expand even more, great. You can go and have Mexico City be a part of that through Monterrey. So it's really interesting and fascinating to get to there. Plus, it has Estadio BBVA, which is still semi-covered, good elevation, great place to play football, 53,000 people strong. And it doesn't have as much competition for that Mexico City market and has that closer proximity to the U.S., which is why Monterrey was selected over Mexico City. Whereas, the London case was obvious. London, London, London. London, I probably would have picked no matter what. However, the history of football getting put in London was the real factor for London, whereas Mexico City hasn't had the same investment, which is why it was more capable to go to a place like Monterrey, which is why we're going to Monterrey to go see the Cerveceros play. Los Cerveceros de Monterrey. Super cool, super fun. Definitely a team I could probably root for. And an interesting team, nonetheless. Let's go to team number 6, though. We've seen 2 UK teams, one team from Spain, one team from Germany, one team from Mexico now. What are we going to get next? We're going back to Germany! And you're going to meet the Munich Bavarians. The Bavarians was a really interesting team and a logo that I just fell in love with. Is it busy for an NFL logo? Yes, but come on. It looks nice. It looks great, and I found it way too hard to pass up the idea of that one. Again, Munich is an interesting choice. This is the final German edition team. With Munich, we get an interesting case here. When you look at Munich, it is the second largest by itself city and market in Germany, Berlin being the biggest. So logically, you'd say, well, why not Berlin? Munich has been hosting more games as of late. Berlin is also, I believe, technically in a different time zone, which is kind of crazy because it's not really that far east or west of each other, but very far north and south. It does add extra travel time. I did put that in, but not enough to be like, oh, travel time is the only reason. Munich was a really interesting choice because Munich is a little bit more friendly to international fare, as it is such a welcoming place for big events which I mentioned before in the previous episode as to why Munich would be considered. Munich has two stadiums here that we could use, Allianz Arena or Olympiastadion Munich. 63,000 people in the Olympiastadion, 75,000 people in Alliance. We can really grow the NFL there as a big, big hub in Europe. Plus, not only from a building perspective, but Munich is an international gateway. With Oktoberfest happening throughout September to October, we can still get those international travel fair and get a lot of Europeans coming into influx more and more with American culture that's super prevalent actually in Germany. It's just a logical place to be. So as much as Berlin could be a very interesting market, the we really capture the biggest market in Dusseldorf, Cologne, and Dortmund. So I'm rechecking my notes. That giant metro population of the three of them is the biggest market in all of Germany. So we get the biggest market. We just don't need Berlin here. Where Munich, we get a really nice metro market, but we get a huge gateway to international fare and a logical place. Plus, Munich is a city that you're going to go to see Neuschwanstein, which is the most famous castle in the world. Oktoberfest is there. The reasons you think of Germany, think of in Munich. You don't necessarily think of in Berlin. Another thing that's really interesting: why the Bavarians? Because the whole southern area of Germany is kind of called Bavaria. Munich, I found in my research, which was really fun, was it has a Texas vibe to it, which I just thought was another. It felt more of a sign of football as a hotbed of football here in the States that Texas is. Why not get a European Texas almost with Munich? There's a lot of Bavarians that think of themselves as Bavarians first, Germans second. So I thought those are really interesting dynamic as we have so many people in this country from the state of Texas that view themselves as I'm a Texan first, I'm an American second. So it was a really fun vibe. So it's just another little cherry on top to see it and to inspire the name of the team as they want to be known as what they are, and that is Bavarians. So that's why we went to Munich and we created the Munich Bavarians, and that is the second of our two German representatives here. So we have two UK teams, two German teams, and a Spanish team, all in Europe. Now here we're going to come back to North America. And I'm going to unveil the only American team to enter during this expansion series. Give to you the Oklahoma City Twisters. There was a whole heck of a lot of competition. And you may say, what? Like, how? How does Oklahoma City win? And while it's a valid concern by some, it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense when you're going to think about it, and it gives a really fun opportunity. With Oklahoma City, we had San Diego, San Antonio, Austin, Columbus, Omaha, Oakland, St. Louis, Salt Lake City, all really logical teams. Birmingham, Alabama. We had 12 American cities vying for a new franchise. The idea of expansion is to get bigger, inherently. How does the NFL get bigger? It gets bigger through international expansion, not necessarily American expansion. That was why we only picked one team. And why Oklahoma City? Oklahoma City is the fifth largest market of the bidding process, so it's not just due to numbers. Oklahoma City is growing. It's not the fastest growing, but it's growing. A big factor for Oklahoma City is this: we need to use the history of football to our advantage, but open up a new market. San Diego still has lineage with the Chargers, and it's close enough. San Antonio still gets the Cowboys and the Texans. Austin, same deal. They're right in between. Columbus is smack dab between Cleveland and Cincinnati, so they have teams to cheer for. Plus, it's close to Pittsburgh, so they could root for three teams if they wished. Oklahoma City is an interesting market. They are pinned between two of the most popular franchises in the modern NFL, with the Dallas Cowboys to their south, and to the northeast is the Kansas City Chiefs. So you may be thinking, well, why that? Use history to your advantage. Oklahoma is another hotbed of football. Oklahoma loves football. Sooner football is king there. And the only professional team taking any attention from you is the Oklahoma City Thunder, which is basketball, completely different style of market. But you have a built-in football audience that loves it. And you have two powerhouse teams that a new team in between them is not going to take away from. You're not going to take away from the magnetism of the Dallas Cowboys with a new team, and you're certainly not going to take away from the magnetism of the Kansas City Chiefs while Patrick Mahomes is playing there. And by the time Patrick retires, this team's going to be 10 to 15 years old, and the fan bases will already be defined. But it's part of a circle of the country, at least to a southern section, that doesn't really have a team to root for. The upper Midwest, big vague area where they have teams, but they got to stretch to it. Oklahoma City is part of that Oklahoma, New Mexico, southern end of California and Utah. Doesn't really have a team. They have Denver nearby, they have Dallas nearby, they have Kansas City nearby. But they really need to stretch and get to that team. So Oklahoma City is a really good geographic option with a ton of history that is friendly to business and is friendly to the sport. So why not go there? So that's why we went with Oklahoma City. And we invoke some of that color scheming, very similar to Oklahoma State. We go straight to the history of Tornado Alley and make them the natural disaster, embrace the natural disaster that is there in a good way by being a wrecking crew of a football team with the Oklahoma City Twisters. So really, really fun team there. And just I'll just say a fucking rad looking logo. So I really love this rendition of the Oklahoma City Twisters. Now we have one team left. The question is who's going to get it? And you know it's not the United States. But I told you it's North America, so we're going to go to our final team here. And it is Toronto, Ontario, Canada. The Toronto Pioneers. Another really in-depth logo here, which I absolutely adore, which is super cool and super fun. But the biggest thing for me here is this. Toronto, again, gives us the best chance to succeed in a new market in Canada. I didn't inherently pick just the biggest market, which is true. I didn't. Vancouver gave a real run for the money to Toronto. Vancouver is tailor-made for football. It has more of that West Coast vibe, very American friendly, super cool place that you want to be a part of that market. Seattle is close enough that you think, oh, Seahawks, but it inherently has its own identity that could support its own team. But Toronto here, Toronto has the numbers on its side with a metro of 6.2 million people, and it's growing at 4.63%. There's over 5 million people in the city alone, and not just the metro. You have a historic building, which is formerly known as the Sky Dome and Rogers Center, that can already hold 50 plus thousand people for football, but there's still room to grow in Toronto to create a new stadium. But the biggest thing is you have access to the biggest media market in Canada. The real driver of Canadian culture is Toronto. It's the gateway in to Canada for many in America. So you're constantly spreading. And the other thing is I think Toronto could use a really widespread model to spread the popularity of the team, in which you can go over to Montreal, you can go to Ottawa, you can go to Vancouver, you can go to Calgary, you can go to Winnipeg. All of those cities could theoretically host a single one-off game or a series of games, especially in Montreal or Vancouver. That would all give you a really viable option to gain the fervor of the country to really embrace the sport in the American way, not just the Canadian way. And it's a place that just fits so well. The reason it's named the Pioneers is the history. It's kind of the gateway to Canada. That Great Lakes region just gathered more and more and more and more people throughout the 1800s and 1900s. And Toronto's kind of the pioneer of the formation of what we know today as Canada, at least through my research. So why it's called the Pioneers is it's kind of that beacon of hope in that golden horseshoe area of Canada that is so populated that gets so many people to want to be there. So it's a pioneering city that you want to be a part of. You get a big major market and a big major country. It's great to see. So that is our 8 teams that are joining the new NFL of 40 teams. So you have the Toronto Pioneers of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. The Oklahoma City Twisters, here's stateside, the only American team to join. We go to Germany with the Munich Bavarians. We head on south to Mexico, south of the border with Monterrey and the Cerveceros, Los Cerveceros de Monterrey. Then we head over to the UK with the London Knights for team number 5. Our first of 2 UK teams. We go back to Germany for a second German experience in the Dusseldorf Bergs, calling the Rhineland, the Rhine River, home. And we go back to the UK with the Birmingham Dragons. Specifically Birmingham, not Birmingham. Birmingham, because I remember what you guys told me. Birmingham Dragons. You get the Jewel Exchange and you get the hoard there of great football wealth. And finally, our lone Spanish team, the Barcelona Realeza Barcelona. Fun team to get to join the ranks. It's incredibly fun to create these teams, but we got more for you on this show. Now, before we get to it, I do have to ask, I hope you're enjoying yourself. But why don't you go check out the rest of our content so you can enjoy yourself even more, man. Our release schedule isn't just Monday through Friday like you can see on screen. It's Monday through Saturday now because we just continually expand here. It's been expansion month really for me, July into August as I'm getting ready for a major vacation and making sure you guys have all this fun content for yourself. But keep checking it out because it's really fun. Monday, it's Pokemon card pack openings, really fun niche audience that I know we're a part of. Tuesday, the ONETA Show, the flagship show. We talk movies, gaming, entertainment, pro wrestling, you name it, we can talk about it there at the ONETA Show. It's a really fun show to get to be a part of. We got future shows coming out that are extremely fun, so go check that out. You can check that on YouTube or Spotify, as all of our podcasts are available on Spotify as well as YouTube. Wednesday, it's the Pokemon Bliss and Oblivion project. That you're getting art done solely by me, no AI involved whatsoever. And there you're going to see new Pokemon created as part of the Bliss and Oblivion project in our own Fakemon region. Thursday, you can go to the ONETA Football Show. You're already here. You already know it. You already love it. But if you want to continue to get ready for the league opener, get ready for football season this year, or just keep having some fun in the expansion series and other fun projects, stay here at the ONETA Football Show for more content every Thursdays. Friday, you get that nice rotational show. It's the ONETA Adventure Show, where we're highlighting a place to go travel and have an adventure for yourself. The ONETA Brick Builder Show, where we're going to build a nice little Lego kit, enjoy some fun at times together. It's just fun to always see the build, and we get some more time-lapse different content here. We get Pokemon card packs, we get Yu-Gi-Oh card packs, we have Lorcana card packs. Just, again, part of that community. It's always fun to be a part of that community. It's a community I love. It's fun to be there. And Saturday is the ONETA Movie Show. It's the newest podcast that we have, where we're covering a ton of really cool movies. This week, we're covering The Burbs, the Tom Hanks classic. Next week, we're going to be fixing Batman vs. Superman. We're doing a lot of fun, different content over on that show. Just a really fun place to be, to get some movie recs, talk movies with some friends. Enjoyable show, and you can take it anywhere you wish, because it's also on Spotify, just like all of our podcasts. Go check out the rest of our content. It'd be super helpful for you guys to do that, and I hope we're giving you some great enjoyment. But we're going to continue. These 8 teams that we just announced, we've represented the US, Canada, Mexico, the UK, Germany, and Spain. 6 different countries, 8 different teams, but they need a place to play. There are new divisions in the NFL. Some extremely familiar, some completely brand new. So let's get to it. We don't need to worry about just Barcelona or just Birmingham. We need to worry about entire divisions. So here's a look at the new NFC, the new conference. On screen, to the north, the Chicago Bears, the Detroit Lions, the Green Bay Packers, and the Minnesota Vikings. The whole of the NFC North stays together, but they now host the brand new team from Toronto, the Toronto Pioneers. Really good close rivalry with Detroit can be created as well, which is really fun. But the NFC North stays to the cold, stays towards its theming as a steadfast beacon of what football should be. We got some changes with the rest of the NFC. The NFC West, really interesting division. We keep all four teams the same as we know. Arizona Cardinals, LA Rams, San Francisco 49ers, and Seattle Seahawks. But they are now joined by the Oklahoma City Twisters. So Oklahoma City is now going to be part of the NFC West. So we're going to see battles of red and gold against orange and black. We're going to see the high-flying style of Kyler Murray and the Cardinals take toward the Twisters and see if they can stay while the Twisters going around. Very fun division to be around, really high-flying place to be. Extremely cool. And when we head out east, this was a really interesting division as only two teams were added to the NFC. The NFC I view as more of the historic conference. Certainly, it's the history of the NFL is far more rooted in the NFC than it is the AFC. And so it was really fun to see two divisions absorb a team from the AFC now. On screen, you can see the NFC East stays chalk but adds the Cleveland Browns. Now the Cleveland Browns leave the AFC behind, and they now have to compete the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles, and the Washington Commanders. Intriguing division to see why Cleveland is there. But the interesting thing about that is Cleveland is football history and originally was in the National Football League and then switched over to the AFC when the merger happened in 1970. So it has history in the NFL, the deep, deep roots going back to the 40s, and even further than that with the lifeblood of the city being a part of such early football history. And then the craziest one, the craziest of all I can show you. The NFC South, Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they stay. But they have a new high-flying threat to deal with in Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I'll be the first to admit, this is an insane division. The most insane I can give you. However, the Dallas Cowboys, big shock here, guys, they ruin everything. Geographically, Dallas is the biggest problem to deal with because to get Dallas to stay in their conference and to hold a history that you do want to hold with the Giants, with the Eagles, and with the Commanders, you want to hold that tradition there. That's really important. But geographically, you want your logic, you want your divisions to make sense. Cincinnati likes to feel a little bit more southern than it actually is. However, it's a team that doesn't have a strong, foundation as much as the other NFC North teams or the AFC North teams did. And Cleveland was, again, another odd man out. The teams of Ohio were kind of just in no man's land. And what a way to introduce them as Cincinnati goes back to a new conference and they join something completely brand new to themselves. So really interesting thing to see, and it'd be really fun to see some of those South teams have to deal with Joe Burrow and the Bengals. But that is your new divisions. The NFC North absorbs the Toronto Pioneers. The West now gains the Oklahoma City Twisters. The East absorbs the Cleveland Browns from the AFC, and the South absorbs the Cincinnati Bengals from the AFC North as well. Now you may be saying, why so much change in the AFC? I'd love to show you. So let's go over the AFC. The AFC North is wild compared to what it used to be. The landscape has changed, but it's more important because we need to go to the East as well. That's what we need to figure out, is how do we deal with Europe. So we'll end with Europe in this conversation. The NFC North, or the AFC North, my apologies. The AFC North is such a fun amalgamation conference here because you have the lifeblood of two conferences getting smashed together. In the new AFC North, it is led by the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. But now, twice a year, they're going to have to face Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Plus, you now have the lineage of the New England Patriots. You have the media market and the firestorm that is the New York Jets added to the conference. Or to the division, I'm sorry. And you get the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you get the black and blue of the AFC North with the flash and history of the AFC East, the former AFC East. So a 5-team division that all have some deep-rooted history, but it's not always in the same division together. It's really fun to see that come into play. And we'll go southward now. We see 3 former AFC East teams all joining the North. It kind of left Miami out in the cold, but it's perfect because South Beach enters the AFC South division. So the Houston Texans, Indianapolis Colts, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Tennessee Titans are now joined by Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and yes, Tua Tagovailoa. And the high-flying Miami Dolphins are now going to be competing against C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence, and whatever the hell Tennessee puts on the field. Technically Will Levis, but he ain't proven like the other 3 are. So Miami and South Beach are finally where they belong, and that is in the AFC South. We go out west. The Denver Broncos, the Kansas City Chiefs, Las Vegas Raiders, and the Los Angeles Chargers. They have new competition that is south of the border in Monterey. So the AFC West welcomes the Monterey Cerveceros to deal with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Sean Payton's Denver Broncos, and whatever the hell Vegas decides to put on the field. But it's a really fun division, and also it feels kind of like leading a lamb to slaughter, giving a brand new expansion team to Patrick Mahomes. But you want to put some of the most storied franchises that have a history south of the border, like the Raiders or the popularity of the Chiefs now, or the Chargers that were just on the border in San Diego back in the day. They all get that nice Mexican exposure again, and it's a friendly exposure for Monterey to join the AFC West. Great place to be. Now we got to go out east. An entire European division enters the AFC East, and a brand new landscape as the 5 European teams all vie for the same division, with Barcelona Realeza, the Birmingham Dragons, Dusseldorf Bergs, London Knights, and Munich Bavarians all fighting against each other for the dominance of Europe year in and year out. It's a really fun way to get to this model and get to where we need to be. But that is the new AFC. If you're on screen, it's a great place to be, to see all those logos together, to see where we are, the new 40-team league. And here's another little recap of the NFC for you, with the North taking Toronto, the West taking Oklahoma City, the East absorbing Cleveland Browns, and the South absorbing the Cincinnati Bengals. So really fun divisions there. Such a cool new place and a cool new landscape for the NFL. But to get there takes more steps than just creating teams and putting them in a division. It takes a great amount of time, even down to schedule. This new league that I'd be proposing, this new league model, would take it up to 320 games, as we would go back to a 16-game model in this league. Because with 8 new teams, you inherently get so many more games than just adding one game to every schedule. So when you add those 8 teams, you add over 50 games, almost 50 games more than you would in a 17-game season where we are now. So it allows for better player safety. And I would still add a second bye week and use almost an 18-game style model of schedule, but only play 16 games. That way, Europe can phase in and out and almost do tours of the United States and then do tours of Europe. So it's a really good way to constantly move pieces on the board, but allow players the safety and the rest that they need. With 2 focused bye weeks throughout the season, so every team has the ability to stay fresh, keep players off the injured list as much as they possibly can, worry about player safety, but still serve the master of the NFL by creating more games, more revenue, and more of a television product that we all could be really, really happy with. That is all what we're proposing. But when you go to TV, you need players. That's the whole point. You need players on the field. So, we're having an expansion draft next week, but you need to see the players that are available to us. Now, I was joined by 3 co-hosts for the NFL expansion draft, which is why I know it's such a fun experience, because it was such a fun experience for me. It'll be really fun for you guys to listen to or watch live on YouTube. But before that, you need to understand the players that would be available in expansion. So I'm going to take you there to the players that were chosen for the expansion draft. What's important to note, in the 2002 expansion draft, which is the best model to utilize, the Houston Texans had a bevy of players that were selected by every team. Every team had to give up at least 5 players to be up for selection. They didn't have to be picked, but they had to be up to selection. And the Houston Texans had to select either 30 players or I believe it was 38% of the cap at the time, or essentially a third of the cap at the time. So they were in a really interesting predicament in what they wanted to do. Team building wise, they chose 17 players, got over the cap number. In this new model, teams would have to give up at least 6 players. They wouldn't be able to hold some of those players back until at least 3 or 4 players were selected. And to include a special teams player, they had to get up to 6. They couldn't be, that would be an additional player available to them. So you couldn't just say, well, we'll give you a punter and a kicker and 4 players. You couldn't cheap out like that. You had to do it this way. But it was a really fun exercise in being an NFL GM, and it's something I would recommend you do if you're interested in this, because it really helps you understand how NFL teams would have to do this and what they do for rosters every single day of the calendar year. So I'm going to take you to every team's roster quick and show you the players that are available for draft. As we go here, and you can see this nice, awesome photo of me if you are live on YouTube here. And then we get back to me in person. Every single team has a really important distinction of what they have to do here. You have to worry about your salary cap, and you have to worry about your team needs. So one thing to consider is how much you're paying a player, because you get to go scot-free out of that contract because new teams absorb their existing contract. So it's a really enticing thing. We see Chicago doesn't have any real cap problems, but there are players that they can get out of cap things with it. This is obviously be highlighted. Chicago would be giving up 8 players, highlighted by definitely DeAndre Swift, but it's interesting to note they do give up a kicker in Cairo Santos, and Tyson Bagent as a quarterback is always notable because quarterbacks are hard to find in the NFL, even if it is just as simple as Tyson Bagent. But a decent selection of players, Chicago going over the 6 that they have to do, going up to 8 players, which was ideally the target before I went to 6. However, it was extremely difficult to find 8 real players on every team that were viable, especially when we're in the season of everyone getting re-signed right now. And we go to Detroit. This is highlighted by 2 players to me, DJ Reader and Alex Anzalone. Anzalone's a leader of the team. These are all with what they would be after this upcoming season, is because this expansion draft would have to happen in 25. So you have aging players with big money salaries. That is why they'd go. Detroit doesn't actually have a problem because they have good cap space here, but it's something to think about. Now we go to Green Bay. This one is a tough one because this is my team. I am a shareholder and a season ticket holder. I obviously adore the Green Bay Packers. but you have to make tough decisions with an NFL GM. Here you have a great player in Preston Smith, but he's aging with a huge cap hit, and you just signed Jordan Love. So it's a big deal. Jordan Love is still on this because this happened. I did all these roster decisions right before Jordan Love got signed, but I knew Jordan wasn't going to be up for selection because he's clearly the player of the future, and Kenny Clark, which is why both those players got re-signed by the Packers. Another great selection here could be Christian Watson, a young player. You don't see a lot of those in an expansion draft, but it's more of an odd man out in Green Bay. You just had to pay a quarterback, you paid Kenny Clark, and you're eventually going to have to pay Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, and Dontavian Wicks. Plus, you have other great players in that wide receiver core. It's more odd man out. And at this point, although Christian Watson is a great player when he's on the field, he has health issues, which is why he made the roster. So a big highlight player there. And you go to Minnesota. Andrew Van Ginkel would be a kind of crazy one since he'd only play a single year for Minnesota at this point. But it's more so they're in a reset status, so anything that you can do to save money and make sure you get there is what we should do. And they are the only one that has a reserve / did not report to camp due to the tragedy of Kyrie Jackson. So again, wanted to acknowledge that for Minnesota. As you move to the South, Atlanta's in a predicament in which they're low on cap space and they have an aging roster, so you have to figure out players are going to need to play. This would obviously be highlighted by two players. The cornerstone of their franchise on the left tackle position is Jake Matthews. He'd be up for selection, as would their tight end Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, in many people's eyes, has yet to live up to the potential that he has, which is another reason why he could be there. Plus, you have now Michael Penix, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson all in the near future. Even if you want to say, oh no, Michael Penix was just paid. Guess what? You're paying quarterback money already. You're going to want to get Michael Penix paid as fast as possible and dump that Kirk Cousins contract. So you're going to do that the second you can if you like Michael Penix. So you do have to worry about that future. And that could mean Kyle Pitts is, odd man out, which is why Atlanta puts him up on the chopping block as a possibility for selection. Carolina, Jadeveon Clowney is another one, just a big one. Cap hit for them. Solid players here, but nothing crazy. Cap space isn't great, though. New Orleans, this is the insane one. In terms of right now, they are almost negative $100 million in cap space. This is the worst cap situation in all of football by far. It is disgusting to see what the Saints are, which is why for years I've been saying the Saints are due a reckoning. Look at the cap hits of just their three biggest players here. It's such a bad problem to have, man. And that is why on this list highlighted, players up for grabs, Derek Carr, their starting quarterback, Ryan Ramczyk, Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, Tyrann Mathieu. These are guys that have been there. Especially the first four I noted. All big, big, big players. Now, I could have went with Cam Jordan. However, I think at 36, the team, instead of forcing him to go to a new team, would probably encourage him to retire, which is why he's not highlighted as a selectable player. Obviously, Cam Jordan, great player in the NFL, but that's a situation you can get out with retirement. But just in the top three contracts alone, they could at least get back to positive cap space by allowing these players to get selected and hopefully being selected in an expansion draft. So you make those all really, really good options because you're trying to get out of cap space hell by just letting someone else absolve your problems. So that's why New Orleans isn't a big place that it is. Like 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players with names. New Orleans really gives a lot of names to the expansion draft. You go to Tampa. Jamel Dean is obviously the best player on that roster there. It's just not necessarily an aging corner at 29, but he's getting closer to where you don't want it to be. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin could be there, but their free agency year I don't think is going to let them get there. Where Jamel Dean, I think, could be released as part of a cap situation for Tampa. Dallas. This is another one like the Saints, is that they have cap space. But that's before Dak Prescott. That's before Micah Parsons. That's before CeeDee Lamb. They really hold the keys to free agency there because they have to determine a lot for every team. So they have to get rid of some decent players in Malik Hooker, Jalen Tolbert could be a good wide receiver pickup as well. A lot of younger players there. The New York Giants, big one. They're getting out of that Daniel Jones contract, and then Illuminor could be a good pickup, as could Devin Singletary. They're guys that are making more money than they probably should, because they were big free agent signings. So that's why you want to possibly get out of that contract. They don't really have any problems outside of the Daniel Jones one. Meanwhile, you got Philly, Darius Slay, 34-year-old corner. That's a liability. But Dallas Goedert, another good player to, and Jordan Davis, another guy, no potential. So he's one of those rare young guys that Philly is good at cutting ties early. If they think they're useful, they keep them. If they don't think they're going to get much out of them, they let them go. So after 3 years and no sign of really going into the potential he's could, you just need a new, fresh start. Jordan Davis could be there, so that's why he's there. And the Commanders, Jonathan Allen, huge part, and Andrew Wiley, good pickups. I'm going to speed it up a little bit here. Arizona, one of those teams, doesn't have a lot of big highlights. Desmond Ridder and Clayton Tune are notable as quarterbacks, although who would draft either of them, I wouldn't really see the point. LA Rams, the big one for them would be Rob Havenstein. He's just an older, aging player at this point, and they're always close on proximity. I did really consider Cooper Kupp, but I just can't see Sean McVay allowing Cooper Kupp to go. And meanwhile, San Francisco, some big names here in Deebo Samuel and Leonard Floyd. San Francisco, negative cap space with negative 26. Someone has to go on that team. We've stated that in previous episodes of the show. Someone has to go. So in this scenario, if you can let $24 million walk out the door of cap hit with Deebo Samuel, you do so. Because you have to pay Brock Purdy. Brandon Ayuk is the more logical receiver to keep due to age, less tread on the tire. And Deebo is... I do not want to insult him. Deebo's a great player. But you're almost in that he's the old 49ers that didn't get it done. I'm not saying it's Deebo's fault either, so please don't see this as an insult to Deebo. But logically, he's the piece that removes easiest, and that's why Deebo goes in this one. But again, Leonard Floyd, good rotational pass rusher there. Good players coming out of San Francisco. And Seattle, highlighted by Geno Smith and Tyler Lockett. Again, negative cap space, not great. They can fix that one. That's not that big a deal. But the Geno contract, 35-year-old quarterback that isn't the guy, with a $38.5 million cap hit, if someone will take it, you let them take it. That's the whole point. If someone will take it, you let them take it. And Tyler Lockett, again, aging out. They have DK Metcalf on that team and other players. Now we go to the AFC. Derrick Henry, available. Negative cap space. Baltimore always figures it out, not a big deal. But Kyle Van Noy, Rashad Bateman, Michael Pierce, all viable players that could be drafted here. The big one would be Derrick Henry. That could be a great way to foster your market by getting a big star like Derrick Henry on your team. Cincinnati, nothing crazy, but good rotational players with Pratt, Karras, and Rankins. And Zach Moss could be a viable running back option if you like that guy. And Drew Sample, decent player. Cleveland, your biggest thing right here, if they can get out of Deshaun Watson's contract scot-free or attempt to, they're doing it. So with negative $68 million in cap space, with the second worst cap space hell in 2025, you bet your ass they're going to try to get rid of that Deshaun Watson contract. Whether someone picks him up or not is a huge, huge question mark. But Deshaun Watson would be a very viable option to try to go, as they're already trying to see if they could trade him or something like. Meanwhile, you have Dalvin Tomlinson, another big-time player with cap space hell, with almost $20 million. Not a bad player, but 31 defensive tackle at the time of this with a big money deal, not necessarily where you want to be. Pittsburgh's a different one. They give up a kicker just to kind of do it with a big cap hit, but nothing crazy. No real problems in Pittsburgh. They have almost $100 million in cap space going into 2025 at this point. Nothing crazy here. Cam Hayward, I guess, or I'm sorry, not Cam Hayward. Connor Hayward is not who I was thinking about. I read that kind of wrong. Honestly, the Miles Killebrew and Cordero Patterson are the most viable players here, and they're aging. Houston's another interesting one. Dalton Schultz and Shaq Mason are the two big ones. Joe Mixon at 29, probably not the big deal. But big money players, you don't have a whole problem with cap space, but you only have $9 million. So you're going to see towards this the push to get players in and out. You could think about people would want to say, well, Stephon Diggs, 32 with big cap hit. He'll be a free agent that year. You can't nominate him due to NFL rules. And Indianapolis is another team. It was hard to pick because there wasn't any real logical options. The only thing to say here is a lot of defensive line picks solely because they carried money. Jacksonville, Evan Ingram, big money deal at 31 as a tight end. He's been good for Jacksonville, but not overall good, so not necessarily what you want to do. I did think about Christian Kirk, but at 29 and being the best receiver Trevor Lawrence has in his young career, you don't do it. And some other viable players in Jacksonville here. Then Tennessee, really interesting with Tony Pollard. Do you want to pay a 28-year-old running back if you don't have to? That's a big one. And then Traylon Burks, again, young face, needs a new change of scenery. Tough player, and a good role player, but not what he was promised to be. Or Malik Willis as well, another viable quarterback here if you have an expansion team. Malik Willis is a viable option to get people excited about your team. Whether it's going to be fully successful, who knows? But it could be very fun to watch. So Malik Willis is interesting. You go AFC East, Von Miller, you're getting out of that contract in Buffalo as fast as possible. And Daquan Jones, 34, $9 million cap hit, big deal. Another viable option here, if a team just wants to try to compete. Mitchell Trubisky, 31, not a huge cap hit, but you're in negative cap space. Sometimes a higher end backup quarterback is what gets cut off teams that need to shave cap space. So that's why Trubisky hit the cut here. Miami, this was a big one. You got negative cap space. They're getting Tyreek Hill. They just got Tyreek Hill re-signed, so they probably figured out some of the cap space issue. However, at the time of doing this, Teron Armstead, 34, injured. Big thing with $22 million cap hit. Kendra Fuller, corner at 30 at this point in a draft process with an $8 million cap hit. That's who goes. Same deal with Raheem Mostert making $4 million. Aging. Big deal in Miami. Big ones in New England. Kendrick Bourne, 30, making almost $8 million. Let him go. But no one to really note in New England here, and not real problems with cap spaces. They have over $100 million. And the New York Jets, they didn't really need to get anyone, but they didn't need to cut, but get out a contract so you don't have to pay. And it's good to give guys like Tyrod Taylor a chance to go start if they can, especially late in their career. So that's why you let Tyrod go. CJ Mosley, another big cap hit to let go. But viable players there. And Brownlee could be a nice young wide receiver option if given that chance. And finally, our last division is the AFC West. Denver, there's nothing to note here. Not a whole lot of help to be gained. Kansas City, Joe Thuney, the highlight, 33-year-old guard with a $26 million cap hit. That's the biggest issue. It's cap here. I thought about Jawan Taylor, but he has an extra year on his deal. And you lose Thuney after 2026. So may as well let him go early to save the cap hit. And you go to Vegas. Big ones here, Jacoby Myers and Gardner Minshew at the quarterback position. Jacoby Myers, good role player. Wide receiver, going to make a difference for you. And Gardner Minshew, viable option, younger than 30, journeyman quarterback that's kind of cheap. Give your team some moxie. And then finally, the LA Chargers here. Big ones, Joey Bosa, 30-year-old, health concerns, $36 million cap hit. If you can let it go, you do. He's a great player when healthy, but he's not healthy enough. You lose Khalil Mack, which is why he's not nominated here as well. Gus Edwards, 4.25 at a 30-year-old running back. It's not inherently what you want. So those are all players that are viable options to be on that. So any player that was highlighted in this exercise is available in next week's expansion draft. With myself and 3 other co-hosts, we're all going to be operating as 2 different teams. It's going to be a lot of fun for you guys to see, and I cannot wait for you to do so. And it is going to be a fun show for everybody to see and watch. So cannot wait for it. I hope you guys really enjoyed this as you got to see brand new NFL teams and the rosters they're going to be able to build with the teams that they have and the divisions they're going to have to compete against. It's a huge way to inform how these drafts are going to go. And I can tell you it was an impact in making this draft which again, I can't wait for you guys to see. I certainly hope you loved this episode as much as I did. It's a blast to do this project with you, and I can't wait for the next two parts of this series to get out to you because I think you're really going to enjoy them. So please go check them out. While you're there, give a like, comment, subscribe to this video. If you're on Spotify, leave us a review. It's great. If you want to stay in touch and a little bit more fun, TikTok and Instagram is your place. Head to Etsy if you want to buy some merchandise and throw some shekels our way for this hard work that we're doing. Very appreciated. And all that artwork, like I said, is done by me, not by AI. So it's all important stuff that I do by myself. And finally, check out the rest of our content Monday through Saturday. 3 different podcasts: the ONETA Show, ONETA Football Show, ONETA Movie Show. All there for your entertainment and pleasure. And Monday, Wednesday, Friday, all really cool, fun content for your enjoyment. But go enjoy your day. Go watch some preseason football if you have to get your fix. It is fun to get football back, and I can't wait for the season with you guys. But we have more expansion series for you next week with the expansion draft, and I'll see you guys there. Thank you so much for watching. It is always appreciated. Peace, love, and hugs to you all. Bye!